Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited to be talking with everyone around the world who's joining us. This panel is called The Game is Up, Animal-Free versus Plant-Based Cheese. And I have two wonderful guests with me. The first is Anja Leissner. She's the co-founder of and head of R&D at Stockeld Dreamery, which is developing plant-based cheeses. The company just launched its first product, Chunk, in Stockholm, which is a plant-based cheese that acts like feta. Anja came to the space from a career in the dairy industry. She graduated from Lund University with a degree in biotech, dairy processing, and food science. And today, her full-time focus is on developing plant-based cheese alternatives. In the bottom there, we have Irina Gerry, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Change Foods, a precision fermentation food tech startup creating dairy products animal-free. Prior to joining Change Foods, Irina led several major product launches at Danone, including Silk Ultra, a high-protein soy milk, and So Delicious's plant-based cheese alternatives. Change Foods is based in the United States and is hoping to launch their first product in 2023. So we have Stockholm in the US representing today. We have a product in the market, a product in development. Yes, and I'd love to start with Irina and just ask her to give us a little bit of a lay of the land. There's multiple ways of creating cheese alternatives. So could you just talk about what's happening now in this space? What's the landscape?
Indeed. I think, the space is obviously very exciting for millennia. We've known cow-based cheese or animal-based cheese. And over the past 10 years or so, I would say plant-based cheese came on the scene and the early prototypes were less than exciting. However, there's been a lot of progress that's been made in the plant-based space, and there's now products that are coming on the market, and I'm sure Anja will tell us about her exciting stuff, but that are continually improving and getting closer and closer to the animal-based products. The next frontier, I would say, is the animal-free cheese is what we call it. It's a cheese produced with a real animal protein, so in our case, casein, that allows us to create the exact same experience for consumers from a taste and texture perspective, because we're leveraging precision fermentation technology to create the compounds that we need. So I see this as super exciting. We now are going to have more and more options, both in plant-based as well as in animal-free, and possibly in the future, as cellular technology develops and we're able to make dairy milk potentially from cells, then there's yet another opportunity to start creating completely animal-free cheese that's made from cellular milk. So I think we're just at the beginning, and it's super exciting. And obviously, we're still in product development, but Anja's product has hit the shelves, so can't wait to hear more.
Yes. And Anja, you have a background in R&D and development biotech. So maybe you can talk a little bit about why it's so difficult to create a cheese alternative.
I would love to. So there's basically, we have been eating cheese for several thousand of years and we love it. It has this happy food hormones. It really makes us excited. It enhances the taste experience of everything we added onto. And I am a devoted cheese lover. So it was a very big challenge for me when I'm trying to find more plant-based alternatives out there. And I started to evaluate the different options that were available and found most of them to be lacking. So I figured out what is the key ingredient, what is the magic component in cheese? Well, it's basically down to two different subjects. The first one is the casein, which is 80% of the milk protein. And it has such a complex structure that actually in science, there are no definite theory of what it looks like. There are more plausible theories, so we know kind of how it behaves, but no one knows for 100% certainty how these four molecules interact and behave and what happens inside this micelle that you're creating. The other component is the milk fat. Cheese obviously is known for the fatty experience and is a carrier of flavor and also confers the texture, the mouthfeel, and all of the goodiness. And in milk fat, we have more, it's such a complex combination of different fats. We have actually more than 400 different fatty acids. So these two very complex ingredients together makes it so difficult to mimic this behavior, because if we go to the plant world, the plant kingdom, we don't have any plant proteins that are identical to the casein. We don't have any plant fat or oils that are identical to the fat that we have in milk. So it's a huge challenge that I'm very, very happy to get my fingers on.
And maybe as a follow-up, could you talk a little bit about, you've just released your first product in the Swedish market. How did you develop that? What is it? Just speak a little bit to Chunk.
Yeah, I would love to. I can't talk about Chunk forever. I'm not going to do that though. Chunk is our first product, and let me also be very clear: is that we've been inspired by the tech industry. So this is also the beta version. This is not the final version. We're really limited in our launch now, and getting a lot of feedback, and also trying to optimize and get it just right, because it's so important. Even though we can talk about the nutritional value of Chunk, which is quite superior, if you don't enjoy eating it and if you don't love it, you're not going to go buy it again, no matter how good it is for your health or the environment or for the poor little cows. It has to be delicious. So I actually started my research on plant proteins already back in 2017. And I have by now developed something that we like to call a protein technology platform. And by now I'm also not only by myself, I have an amazing team in my R&D team, researchers. So we're 6 people at the moment, and everyone is just pitching in and doing amazing work. But this protein technology platform has been based around how to, since I come from the dairy industry and have a lot of knowledge in dairy processing and techniques and so forth, I've been looking into how does the casein behave in different applications, and how can I use plant proteins, how can I work with them, and how can I make them behave in a similar way. So that has been like the goal with what we have. So now we have this protein technology platform that we can then direct into different applications. So we have Chunk, which is to be used as a feta cheese, but then we also have a spreadable cheese. We have a melting cheese coming up. I have by accident, I did a whippable cream on 3 ingredients, which, that was a failed experiment because it was meant to be a cheese, but still a whippable cream that will be good in the future. And we also have a friable one coming up. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, but right now we're just trying to get to know our people and get to know our consumer and see what do they want and how can we provide this for them. That is our goal.
And Irina, similarly, you're working very hard on building a relationship both to the ecosystem and with your consumers. So although you haven't launched a product in the market yet, can you talk a little bit about why you're already focused on marketing and what you're doing?
Right. We are, and it is quite atypical, I would say, for an early stage startup to bring on a CMO or a marketing person. But we do have our reasons for that. And when you think about new technology, new to the world technology, there's so much work that needs to go into what do we call this type of product? How do we explain this technology to consumers, right? How do we remove some of the hesitations and barriers that might come with what is this animal-free cheese that you made without animals, but it contains an animal ingredient? All of those are big, hefty topics for a marketer to go sort out. And so, for example, one of the things that we started to do is trying to work on nomenclature. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the journey that the cellular based technology companies have been on with clean meat and cultured meat and cultivated meat and cell-based meat, et cetera. And that process takes time. It takes talking to each other, it takes talking to experts, it takes talking to regulators, it takes talking to consumers to understand, based on different words that we can call it, which ones provide the most clarity and differentiation, and which ones have the most taste appeal. And so I've begun this work already in collaboration with a lot of companies in the space, where we're trying to understand how do we as precision fermentation companies somewhat follow in the footsteps of where other industries have been, and to start working on some of this nomenclature and hopefully land something in market before kind of products start to come out at large, so that we are consistent, because a lot of the times consistency in language matters a great deal, because it helps us and it helps suppliers and it helps retailers and it ultimately helps consumers understand, well, how is plant-based cheese different from animal-free cheese? At the moment, there isn't animal-free cheese on the market. And so how we bring it to market matters a lot, because there will be consumers who will want to stick to plant-based cheese, for example, for a variety of reasons. And then there will be consumers that would want to go to animal-free cheese, and they believe that, this great way of integrating caseins or, as a functional ingredient or animal fats is a great way to get to the product performance without the sustainability or animal welfare issues. And so we as companies, as an industry, need to be clear to them what the products are and what they're not, but do it in a way that's appealing and appetizing and not too sciencey, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And how are you working together with the industry to create this alignment and to make sure that there is clarity for the consumer?
Well, as you've seen, I'm sure in the cell-based companies, there's a couple of formal coalitions that have been formed already by companies within the space. We currently in fermentation space do not have a formal coalition. However, just by virtue of being mission-driven founders and being part of the same really small network of people who are driving this change, we're communicating, we're talking, we're collaborating because we're all driven by the same mission. And so it's actually quite refreshing. I come from the world of large CPGs where things get a lot more competitive. I think in our community, and we're so nascent and we're basically all kind of growing up together in a sense that it creates amazing areas for collaboration where we can pick up the phone and talk to each other. And I think it's been actually wonderful and a supportive community, even though, at some level we're competing, but I think most of us see this as kind of a rising tide and helping each other.
And Anja, you've just, again, released this product in the market. So you're dealing with the challenges straight on of one, ensuring that consumers have a great taste experience that they want to come back and try it again. And two, around communication. So what are the challenges that you're facing right now when it comes to this?
Yeah, I totally agree with Irina when it comes to genome nomenclature. And we are actually quite happy now in celebration mood because there were an amendment that was a process in the EU for us not to be able to refer to it as a plant-based cheese, or not even call it cheese-like, or not at all referring to it in any cheese terms whatsoever. And that got revoked. So it didn't get pushed through. So we've been celebrating. We just got the news last week. So that was amazing. So now we can actually call it a plant-based cheese, even though we have based all of our strategies on what to name our products on the fact that we could not call it that. So that's where we're talking about the chunk and not a feta substitute or another kind of clever name or take on feta. And also that why we have spread, melt, and so forth. So that's amazing. But there are several challenges in the EU where we have the novelty food, you have some proteins that in the States are no problem at all, but in Europe, just because we haven't eaten it long enough, we can't use it in our products. For us, we have always been I also like what Irina said about not having the cheese to be perceived as too sciencey. We don't want to put a lab cheese out there. So food is passion, food is culture, food is joy. And we have been working since, I think we were 3 or 4 months in when we start working with chefs. And I really feel sorry for them because the first prototype that they got to taste, they were not anywhere near to be classified as a cheese or barely pet food, I think. But it's been amazing to work so closely with chefs. So they've been helping us saying how should it behave? How should it slice? How much can it stick to the knife for it not to be a hassle? How to tune in the flavor, how to get more umami, or they want more salt or whatever. So it's amazing to be able to benefit from that and really make sure that we get this this full taste experience in there. And it's really, and our cheese is made in a small dairy plant in the middle of Sweden. So we also have to put on the label, we have to put may contain trace of milk because it's made in a dairy plant. So that feels very off that you have to do it, because there are people who have severe allergies to the milk protein. So lactose is not that severe, but the milk protein can be quite severe. So we have to declare it, we have to put it there. But yeah, so there's a lot of challenges, and really to talk about it in a way that makes sense to the customer, I think is important. And for us, the chunk, it's not a mimica or replica or a faded copy of feta cheese. It really has its own character. You can use it the same way you can use a feta cheese. You can crumble it, you can have it in the oven, you can have it with beetroots or whatever you fancy, or in a Greek salad is delicious. But it doesn't mean that it will taste exactly like a feta cheese, because it's made out of peas and it's made out of fava bean. It will taste a little bit like peas and fava bean. It's authentic. It's, it's not putting makeup on a pig. It is what it is. It's a fermented product. It's delicious, but it also stands on its own. And I often refer to Oatly's oat milk, because you don't drink it to think that you're drinking, cow milk. You're drinking something else. And this is what we're trying to achieve with Chunk as well, where it just puts its own kind of reference out there.
Mm-hmm. I want to pick up a little bit on the fact that the way that you're going to market, which is unique, as we know, it's really hard to develop a food product and introduce it no matter what industry you're in or whatever you're trying to do. But in your case, you are working with chefs to almost have these product releases where you can get customer feedback and use them as the vehicle for saying, what did the consumer think? And Irina, I want to bring you into this too, because I know that you're very focused on working with chefs as a way of going to market. So can you speak a little bit more about that approach? And then I'll let Irina chime in as well.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, it comes down to finding the right people to work with. So you need to find a restaurant, you need to find a chef that's also are intrigued by what we're trying to achieve. It doesn't mean you have to be completely online, but of course it helps if you have the same kind of thoughts and mission or vision when it comes to sustainability, or to just have like really healthy or good food. But what's most important is that someone who is engaged, who's wanted to do something, who gets intrigued by the chunk and would like to just present it. Because if they're not engaged in it, you will never get the feedback. It's really hard. And chefs, I love chefs, and every chef is very different, and you need to find your way to communicate with them, because some of them are not very verbal. They like working with the hands, but they're not very keen on sitting and writing long reports on what the customer liked it or didn't like. So then you have to know who works watching. You pick up the phone and you're like, hey, so what's happening today? What are people saying? Or you go out there and you sit there and you observe and you talk to them. And there's nothing better than when you have a brilliant chef that just gets so enthusiastic and passionate about your product. And I really like, we have one that's talking about having it combined in a really meaty burger. And one could think that that's completely opposite to what we want to achieve. But I would say no, if we can just take the cheese out as a component in any dish, I'm happy. If we can contribute to someone to find a new way of eating or something, that will change their lifestyle in some way, then I'm happy to do it, no matter what the context is. So it comes down to finding the right people and then just adjust your working method accordingly to how they prefer to work, which is a big challenge, but it's a lovely one.
Can I chime in just a little bit? I think we should probably broaden the aperture when we think about the role chefs could play in our environment, because if you think about milk, it's one ingredient, and there are hundreds of types of cheese, right? There's sauces, there's creams, there's dessert, there's
thousands, I would say.
I mean, thousands, right?
Yeah.
All these product categories, all these different experiences. You could fry it, you could cook it, you could bake it, so many things, right? Of one ingredient. Now we are actually at the cusp of having so many more ingredients. Right now we have plant-based, now we have animal-free coming, we have fermentation, we have novel ingredients that haven't even been used. And when I look at the type of creativity that chefs have brought to traditional products, right? You go to a restaurant and there's probably 30 dishes all using the same 3 ingredients, right? what now if I give you 10 different ingredients, and the amount of creativity now that you can have with the products? And so to me, I would love to engage chefs further down the funnel, not just with product development or testing or prototyping. I think a lot of companies in our space are doing that, where we will engage, a chef or two as kind of a showcase. But then I flip on TV, in the United States, we have a food network, an entire network dedicated to cooking 24/7. And there are chefs and there are competitions, and it's just like mind-blowing dishes, all made with animal products. There is almost nobody who's cooking with plant-based, and just blows my mind. I'm like, plants provide texture, color, nutrients, wonderful ingredients, right? And so how can we infuse both plant-based, but also now introduce some of these products into the consciousness and the experiences? Because Anja, 100% agree with you. Food is about an experience. It's about who you're sharing it with. It's about that personal moment of enjoyment. It's about culture. It's about tradition. And no one can help us bring this into the masses and to people in a way that is an experience better than chefs. Exactly. Because we can come up with products that are great, right? But there's still a lot of the time they're just an ingredient. And what I'd love to do, and I know there's chefs in the audience, is challenge these chefs to apply those amazing knife skills, right? And that creativity to all the new foods that we have, because you can create amazing product experiences without animal ingredients. And I just look forward to the time when we really start doing it at scale. And I would love to see people get involved.
And to add on that, this does open up the possibility for creating an alternative food system and having each of these ingredients or cheeses that you all are developing, have it be its own platform for so much more, whether that's 1,000 variants of cheeses or it could be something else. This is just the beginning. So can you talk a little bit about that alternative food system that you see, as well as what the platform technology potential is? I'll let whoever wants to take it. Whoever wants to go first. It's a big question.
So the question is, I just want to say one thing. We're talking now about plant-based. We're talking about animal cheese. We're talking about plant-based cheese, and we talk about the animal-free cheeses. I would say that there will be a fourth category here that I'm kind of working towards as well, which is a combination between the plant-based and the animal-free ones. That will be something new, because as I mentioned earlier, the casein, the milk protein is very crucial, but the milk fat will contribute with at least as much to the taste experience. And in order to create and recreate the milk, the milk composition and then the cheese behavior, you need to have many different technologies, I think. So I think that when we have the cultivated casein and the way it will really just pick up and it will be used as an ingredient and just have a synergy effect with the plant-based cheeses, and that we will result in other, probably really a category of their own, but other kind of products. So I think it's amazing. And I have biotechnology in my background. I also mentoring a startup here in Sweden that is devoted to expressing casein, that I'm doing my best to support in all way possible, called Circular. And I think it's a really intriguing technique. And the only setback I would say with it is that it's a very new technique yet. So there are several years left before we know the full potential, before we know all the use cases, and before we have also the economic circularity to it, where you also can achieve it to a reasonable pricing. Whilst the plant-based alternative, that's something that we can address and access here and now. We can get it mass produced, we can get it out there, we can start, because I'm really happy to see what's going to come out of all this precision fermentation, but I can't wait 5 years or 7 years until it's approved in Europe, until all the technique and everything is in place. So I think we need to get it going. And with plant proteins, there are basically no limitation to what you can do, especially if you combine it with fermentation. And now I don't refer to precision fermentation, but the fermentation that you will use when you will produce the cheese, the animal-based cheese, for in a regular setting, the traditional fermentation. Same as when you do kombucha or kimchi or other fermented products. So if you combine the technology with the plant proteins and the knowledge you have there, that's, for example, Stockeld Dreamery is compiling with fermentation, that will get you that extra mile when it comes to flavor, texture, nutrition, and behavior, then I think there's really no limitation to what you can achieve. And there's this space is just so amazing. I really love it. We always say that the plant-based cheese or the cheese alternative, it's a white space still, because there haven't been any companies that have been able to really claim it. So we see the plant-based milk going right up, and the plant-based cheese like, oh, whilst the cheese consumption around the world is increasing. And then you should also take under consideration very many people will stop eating meat and then turn to cheese because it feels like a better, kinder alternative. It's better for you, for the animal, for the environment. Unfortunately not. The only meat that has a higher environmental impact than cheese is beef. So otherwise, the cheese is worse than poultry. Cheese is worse than swine. Cheese is the same as driving your old school car 50 kilometers. So it has a really high environmental impact. And that's something that people tend to not be quite aware of. You think you're doing yourself and the environment a favor by picking up the halloumi and barbecue that instead of the sausage. And actually, it's the opposite way around. So there's a lot of challenges out there. It's an amazing space to be in. And I think the technology that we're seeing now is also just the beginning. So we're scratching the surface. There's so much left. And I'm super happy to just be in on the ride and see where we're going to end up. But the technology we do have in our hands right now can achieve very many different things. And now I'm going to hand it over to Irina. I'm sure she wants to add something to this.
No, I think you've explained it really well.
Okay. I would say, Irina, is there anything else in terms of the alternative food system you see that's being built or created, or what you see the potential to be?
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely right. Because as I mentioned earlier, plant-based it's kind of been around. Like we know milks, cheese obviously has a lot of growth possibility there. It's in single digits in terms of market share right now, low single digits. Largely driven by the fact that it's a newer segment. It has its performance issue, as Anja mentioned. There's companies working on it, but I think the true potential of cheese specifically, or yogurt, or some of these kind of creamier, meltier type of products will be unlocked with precision fermentation. So if you don't mind, I'll take a step back with what is precision fermentation, because we throw it around like it's a thing that everybody knows and everybody might not know. So if you don't mind, I'll just do a quick kind of dive on this. So what we do so Anja mentioned traditional fermentation, right? This is what we've used for millennia. That is how you make kombucha, sourdough bread, etc. Then there's biomass fermentation. And this is where you take microorganisms such as fungi, for example, and you ferment it and you use the entire, what we call biomass. So the entire mass that these microorganism produces. So companies like Atlas Foods or Meaty Foods that are making, whether it's plant-based bacon or plant-based steak, it is still considered plant-based, even though it technically falls into this third kingdom of, microorganisms, but people don't really know this. So we kind of lumped it together with plant-based. And precision fermentation is a very unique pillar within fermentation, because what we do is we take the same microorganisms, so whether it's yeast or fungi, and we're actually able to program them and encode a particular piece of DNA. So in our case, we're encoding dairy protein DNA, so caseins. And then when these microorganisms get fermented in a fermentation tank, kind of like brewery, they actually produce these proteins. And then these proteins can be filtered out and separated from the microorganism itself. And what you get at the end of this process is a pure protein concentrate or isolate, right? So it's an ingredient that is identical to an animal product. So in our case, it's a casein that we make that is bioidentical. So on a molecular level, it's the same exact thing, but it was made without the animal. And that's why we've kind of drawn a little bit of that distinction between plant-based and what we're calling at the moment is animal-free, because we are wanting to communicate the fact that this is a animal identical ingredient made without the animal. And what it allows you to do, especially in the space of dairy products, is create foods that will have the same performance. So stretchy, melty cheese, kind of that mouthfeel. With ice cream, if you're using whey, you can get that mouthfeel of dairy ice cream without using animals. And I think that technology is really going to step change what we have known to date, and really open up the growth spaces that we haven't even foreseen today. Because today there's a sizable group of consumers, 30 to 40%, depending on the market, that are flexitarian, that are seeking to have fewer animal products in their diet, whether they're reducing meat or dairy or whatever. But they keep running up against this performance issue, right? Like where the products are not quite the same. Maybe the cheese doesn't melt the same. Maybe the ice cream doesn't have the same creaminess. And the moment we can unlock that, and now we're offering people a no trade-off product, right? We're saying, look, you can have your cheese, right, and save the planet at the same time. And I think, to me, that is so amazing, because it no longer requires the consumer to sacrifice. It no longer requires them to somehow compromise their experience with food. Now they can have the experience and be kinder to the planet and animals. And I think so many people would take the leap with us once we have these products. And I know we're all impatient because we're still in development, and yet we see this possibility. And I think a lot of companies are seeing this possibility and jumping in on this technology, because the potential to bring about massive change, I think, is so great with this technology.
How is it that it empowers the consumer to make a better choice, save the planet, be a better decision maker in their food choices?
Well, because at the end of the day, right, and again, it's going to take us some time, and we have to be armed with some patience here. At the end of the day, the promise of fermentation technology is that it can deliver these animal-free foods at or below cost of animal-based foods. So the projections that we are seeing from a lot of kind of think tanks and analytics companies is that within the next 5 years, we expect to see fermentation-based foods to be price parity with their animal-based counterparts. And you've seen this in plant-based meats, right? Impossible came in at quite a price premium, and competing with Beyond and increasing their scale, they've been able to bring down the price of their products to where, again, if you think from a consumer perspective, these products taste great. They're available at retail where they shop, or they're available at the restaurants, and they're now no longer priced very differently. And so what's the hesitation, right? When you offer a consumer a choice and say, look, I can give you all the same great experience with the product, and I can offer you where you eat it, and I can offer it to you at a price that's reasonable and very close. Why not, right? And so the more barriers we break, the greater the adoption. And so for us, when we think about change foods and how we go to market is also incredibly important beyond just the product. Like, product is one pillar of success, but you also need to have the right pricing, you need to have the right packaging, you need to have product in the right context available to consumers. And we live in a society where we buy things at the grocery store and we eat away from home quite a bit. And so being available in both of those environments is absolutely critical, and being integrated, again, into the way people eat. Because when we ask people to go out of their way, whether it's for, where you buy products or how much it costs or how it tastes, we're creating barriers. And the more of these barriers we break, the faster the adoption will be. And from every research I see, people want to be more sustainable. They want to be healthier. They don't necessarily crave to kill animals or, have animals be milked for their enjoyment. That is not what they're after. They're after a particular experience. And when we give it to them without the use of animals, I think we'll have ourselves a great change on our hands.
Yeah. In the moments we have left, I would love to open it up and say you both are on the forefront. You're currently working on building something, and there is still, as you just mentioned, many roadblocks and challenges ahead in terms of what it's going to take to have this come fully into being. So Anja, I'll start with you, but what are the collaborations or the partnerships or the help that you're looking for right now to move what you're working on forward?
Well, we are aiming to increase the R&D team with about 15 to 20 people the coming 18 months. So obviously we're looking for these brilliant, passionate, crazy scientists who would love to take on a challenge like this and join our crazy team. So, and we're also going to hire a chef. We're going to have a chef in-house that will be with us every step of the way and help us not only in like the product development, but also with recipe. How can we cook it? How can we use our different products and just really take it to that next level, which I'm super excited about. We currently just bought a benchtop pizza oven that goes to 500 degrees Celsius that we have in the lab. So now we make the best pizza ever. So we're going to continue to really increase the culinary aspect in the company. What we really need, except for these talented people, are, of course, collaboration when it comes to production. But we have a head of operation that is really on it and talking to many different people in different countries, but to figure out how to produce, and we can basically be located in an original dairy plant, because a lot of the processes I design are applicable in those lines. Since I come from that, with that background, I always kept that in mind for scale up. But yeah, obviously, of course, if there is someone who would be intrigued to collaborate with us and co-produce products, I would be love to hear from you. Except for that, I would say, people who are just passionate, who are just eager, who just want to contribute somehow, or just find this project to be exciting. I'm not always quick in answering, but I do always answer messages that I get on LinkedIn and emails. Sometimes it takes me a little bit of time because we quite caught up in everything we're doing right now. But yeah, so everyone who would like to join our team somehow, you're more than welcome.
And I'll add that while you're based in Sweden, you are looking globally for talent.
Yes, we have people. In the 1st of July, we have a scientist moving here from Argentina who moves here with her husband and her puppy. So it's amazing. It's a challenge to find the people, because you have to be very often when you have I am the exception to the rule. Very often when you have the scientific background or focus, you're someone who really likes to go deep and dive in, and you might not always want to get out of your comfort zone. So this space, the science never, lie. It's so safe. It's so reliant. You will have your experiments. You will have your results. Everything is a learning, but it's a very kind of safe environment. So to find those who are really passionate about science, but are equally passionate about taking a risk or doing something that will have a great impact. You don't find us everywhere. So you need to go searching. We have people from Italy, from Spain, from Slovenia, from Ireland, from England, from China, from all over the world joining us. And we also now, of course, hired a French woman, because if you make cheese, you have to have French people in the team. Everyone gets that. But yeah, it's a challenge. And yeah, we never had Swedish as a criteria for employing, and all documentation, even though me and my co-founder were both Swedish, but all documentation has been in English since the beginning, because we always aim to go big and go abroad, and also to include and not exclude people.
Yeah. If I can add to that, I think, COVID was a terrible thing that happened, but I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic was the fact that we all realized that we can hop on Zoom and find our people anywhere in the world. I mean, look at us now. I'm calling from Florida at the moment because I'm on vacation, and here we are at a conference together. And all of last year, I've been able to meet amazing, passionate, mission-driven people globally, right? I think we've really erased the borders, and this community specifically has been so welcoming and so open to communicating and to collaborating that I think we are no longer constrained by our geographic locations. We now can work with people all over at the click of a button from anywhere. In fact, I reside in Colorado. My entire team has been based in Australia. I've never actually met physically in 3D any of my team. For 6 months, we've been working together. We're about to meet in a couple of weeks, but never met. And so here we are running a startup globally, spread all over the world. And we have partners in Europe, and we have partners in the US, in the Bay Area. and none of us are physically present together, and it hasn't really been a barrier. Now, I'll say, of course, if you have an R&D team and a product development team, yes, those people need to be on the ground.
It's different.
I would like to broaden that, because I think for us, you asked about what is it going to take for us to build this and make this big, right? And for us to build it big, we need the ecosystem of people to support us. And it's not just people on the ground. It's not just people exactly hired by the team or in the lab. It's collaborators, it's creative agencies, it's fermentation scale-up partners, it's people who provide you tools, ingredients, connections, funding. It's people who can help get you in front of the chef in the right restaurant. It's the chef in the restaurant. It's the distributors and retailers. It's all of the above. And none of us really have to be co-located anymore, which is scary, but also an amazing thing, because now we can operate businesses globally and we can make tremendous impact. So I would say, wherever you are in the globe, if you have a passion for building the future of food and you have a skill set anywhere in the food ecosystem, whether, starting with funding, ending with retail execution, you have a place in this ecosystem, and we could use you, we could use your help, and we would love that. So I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. If people would love to connect, please don't hesitate to reach out, because there's so much work we need to do. If you look at the global food system, it is massive. And the work we have to do is absolutely massive. There's not any one company or one person that can do this, right? And it's about coming together, building together, and everybody kind of pick your corner in the world and punch a hole in the problem, right? And together we can do that. And now we are much more connected. And I think it gives us power and power to drive change pretty quickly. So I'm actually really excited. And thank you guys for having me at the conference.
Thank you. And that is quite the invitation from both of you. We have about 2 minutes to go. And I just want to ask if you have any closing remarks, anything I didn't ask you want to mention upon, short and sweet, but anything last you want to end on.
Oh, in 1 minute's time.
Go for it.
No, but I concur with everything Irina said. It's amazing to be able to connect with people like her. One of my biggest mentor is located in US, in California, and you can find a support system here. And I think also this time has enabled us to, because people really want to help. If you ask for help, people are happy. You're kind of empowering them while asking for help. So this is something that I've been seeing a lot during this Corona time, that people are just reaching out, connecting, supporting each other in a completely different context than I've seen previously. And I think that's an amazing pro that we've been aware of. So I'm just, really grateful to be meeting both of you. And I have some question for Irina when it comes to if the casing, if you're producing them separately or if you're combining them myself, but maybe that's not for this hour.
That would be too much in the secret sauce part. But we can chat. No, I think, for me, I think the closing remark is the world is changing. It's changing right in front of our eyes. And sometimes it's hard to see, right? We still have so many issues. And I find myself occasionally kind of sinking into the problems, right? Like reading the reports and seeing what's happening in the world with sustainability, with animal agriculture, all of the issues. And I think what's really pulls me out of it is the fact, just the realization that, we're at the beginning and it's hard. But I also see that future, and the future, if you take the longer arc to it, all the little problems and the things we have to deal with, they will eventually be resolved. And I think to me, it's how do we get as many people as possible working on this today, working on this together, having this vision of the future, because I think no longer do you have to compromise what your job is and what your purpose and what your passion is. Like, I think you really can combine that and live in the moment where work doesn't feel like work. Work feels like it's just exciting. It feels like building the future and having this purposeful way to spend your day. And so for me, the call is like, let's build it. Let's go for it. Let's ignore the haters and create something amazing.
Beautiful. We are at time. Thank you both so much for coming on. And for everyone that's listening, stay tuned, because next we're going to be talking about fish alternatives with 2 other exciting startups. And I'll see you in a second.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.